join us later, Sherry, are going to, or to speak later, are going to join us just a bit prior to their slated time on the agenda. So that'll be
Okay.
Coraggio and Echo Northwest and Charlie Hopewell.
And we need a certain amount of people to approve uh, the executive committee
Yes,
meeting minutes.
yes, and typically that would be relevant pretty much every meeting, but unfortunately for this meeting, it's not. And a large part of that has to do with the recent transition I think I shared with many of you about, and that is that Sydney King, who was our uh, great and wonderful admin person, uh, went on a job rotation opportunity. And in order to get there as quickly as the folks at housing needed her, she had to go pretty quickly. So in the transition, Sherry, we're fortunate to have Ashley Olson, who you can see
Hi,
here,
Ashley.
who's doing a great job filling in, and also Kelly McNabb, who you'll see at the December 13th full board meeting, also filling in and assisting us during that transition. And we hope to have a new person in the role and um, um, taking over where Sydney left off relatively soon. So we
Okay.
don't have to worry about quorum. All that to say, we don't have to worry about quorum
That was a
today.
long way to say it, but
I was trying to use my words
you were
because
thorough. You were
I
thorough.
I didn't want to just rely on pictures and how I felt about it. So
All right.
to our
Okay.
conversation yesterday. It looks like Ashley, did you have a question?
Oh, I was just going to let you know that I am working on the minutes from the October meeting today and we'll be caught up by the next meeting in January.
Okay. All right. Well, thank you. So, Anne is spending time with family, taking time off. So you got me, and I am just back this morning from Phoenix from the National Governors Association Apprenticeship Week Innovation Summit. Is that the title?
Yeah, I think you nailed it.
I think I nailed it. It was a lot. So my opening remarks is I'm going to talk a little bit about that. But before I do that, we already dealt with the quorum issue. I'm going to do an overview of the agenda. We're going to do a little opening remarks, which I'll talk about that. Public comments, skip consent agenda. We're going to talk a bit about the agreements for the Workforce and Talent Development Board, who we are, what we do, roles and responsibilities. Todd's going to talk to us about the WTDB standards on decision making and action. And then, as Todd mentioned, we're going to have a report from Coraggio Group, Echo Northwest, and Charlie Hopewell, I think. We got some folks in the lobby, so whoever can admit people, if you can do that. So first, I will ask, are there any public comments? Anybody? Anybody? All right, which I always say reminds me of a church altar. So, absent any formal comments, we'll go on to kind of an overview of the meeting. I have so many documents open on my computer. I can't find the documents I'm looking for. Hold on. It's here in all of these documents. I'm just gonna go down the list of open things. It's not that open thing. It's not that open thing. Okay, so it must be this open thing. All right. So just a quick overview. The summit was really just one full day in Phoenix, put on by the National Governors Association to focus on apprenticeship. Governor Katie Hobbs of Arizona spoke to us, and it was really interesting. We heard a lot of good stuff. I did use my note taker, my AI on my phone to take the notes. So those super helpful. And hopefully I can get them all put together and give them to Todd and send them out to folks. But just a high level overview, we heard from Washington State that Governor Inslee, when he was governor, is that right? had prioritized apprenticeship, that Washington State supports 22,000 active apprenticeships, which they said was equivalent to Washington State University's undergraduate enrollment. Um, they have expanded their apprenticeship to include teaching, construction, partnerships, and also the corrections facility, pre-apprenticeship for those who will be transitioning out of corrections, that kind of second chance employment kind of, relationship. So that's an interesting piece. And they weren't the only ones to talk about that second chance work. Their key focus is integrating apprenticeships into high school in collaboration with businesses. Montana was different. This was the panel, this kickoff panel. Montana had like 68% of their youth do not go to college. So they have a big pool of young people they're trying to reach. Um, let's see what else. They had an interesting discussion about their collaboration with tribal leaders to make sure that the pre-apprenticeship process was relevant. So one of the things they found out in talking to tribal leaders is they didn't want them to reorganize everything and come to the tribal lands to develop it. They preferred if their folks came to a facility. So they didn't think it was necessary. And then for various other reasons, that was their desired approach in Montana. It doesn't mean it would be everybody's desired approach. We heard from Intel, the Intel person who is located in Arizona, but she's located in Arizona, so she was big on Arizona, but she's actually worked with us here in Oregon too, right, Todd? And her name is Cindy Harper, and she's the VP of Talent Planning Acquisition for Intel, I guess stateside. I don't know globally, but outside of
I think
Arizona.
stateside. Yeah.
Yeah, and she talked about how they're trying to integrate their apprenticeships and into the semiconductor space. They're working with community colleges. We actually went to a community college while we were there to see a specific program that they are supporting. They talked about their investment over the last, I think it was 5 years, something about $250 million. They talked about transferable skills. Todd and I were both very interested about something Cindy said, which was it's at this point in the apprenticeships and even the pre-apprenticeships that she thinks we can start building the next generation of PhD folks in the field. Not to say that's the ultimate goal, but what they found was that kids coming out of high school can't conceptualize their way up to that. But when people are working in apprenticeship and pre-apprenticeship, if there are people who want to move further, this is the time to start kind of talking to them about it, because they are much more inclined to understand it or see the relevancy, if that makes sense. So that was something we thought was interesting. Some themes across the states and sectors that came up, tax credits in Montana, direct funding support for apprenticeships, the Good Jobs Challenge, of course, TANF and WIOA. One of the big things that came out of this, which comes out of every conversation, key challenges were childcare and housing. Childcare was mentioned multiple times as a key wraparound factor issue in both rural and urban areas where people need the support, and specifically this type of work. They talked about the need for 24-hour childcare and how childcare is a big barrier. Housing came up, but childcare came up again. Scalability, talking about rural areas, rural apprenticeships, having liaisons, specifically tribal liaisons, but also other liaisons. And then recognition of credentials, trying to make sure that these credentials align with college credit and career pathways. Like I said, we went to a community college. We talked to two young women who are in what program were they in? They are in a program sponsored by Intel. They did a quick start program. And then after the quick start program, they are they're not pre-apprenticeships, they're apprenticeships at Intel. And is it in semiconductor, Todd? I just can't remember.
I don't remember exactly, Sherry, but I
Yeah.
remember the first two letters in the acronym were AI. So I think it was like automated information technology. Um, and then I can't remember what the last one, the last letter was. But yeah, you're spot on. I mean, it was related to demand and partnership needs, primarily based initially on what Intel, came to the table with. But then, of course, as people like Venkat know in particular, TS what is it? Taiwan Semiconductor Manufacturing, TSMC,
They were there,
is
yeah.
yeah, also has a large facility not too far from Intel's in Phoenix, and so it's expanding to not only help with talent development, a talent pool, talent build for Intel, but companies like TSMC in semiconductor space. But then what they found, as they shared with Sherry and I yesterday out at Maricopa Community College, is that more and more advanced manufacturing organizations, not necessarily in semiconductors, uh, really thought that the program that they've established, catering to the semiconductor needs, also applies foundationally to many of the skill sets they look for. So they're beginning to, develop the program even further so that the foundational part of that program will meet the needs of other advanced manufacturers outside of the specific, semiconductors sector. Yeah.
Yeah, and I'm looking at the note here. It says that the day we were there, earlier in the day, Governor Hobbs announced the first in the nation registered apprenticeship for semiconductor manufacturing technicians. So that is what I think those two young ladies are in that program for semiconductor manufacturing technicians. So they were very excited. There was a lot of good information. We got to go to the Arizona Diamondbacks. There's some really good baseball fans there. There may be baseball fans here, but we got to go to the dugout and all of that. So that was exciting to baseball people. I'm not a baseball person, but I'm assuming it was very exciting. So, any questions about that? Any questions? Any questions? It's a lot of good information. It was a lot. And like I said, I actually do have good notes on that. So I will try to put them together in some kind of format and send them out to everybody.
I did want to, I mean, I do think, Sherry, that it was interesting to note as we talked with Maricopa Community College that the Quick Start program that Intel has in Arizona is very similar to the Quick Start program
Mhm.
that Work Systems and Portland Community College are doing with Intel up here in Portland area. So it was interesting to see that alignment and commonality. And then Sherry and I also got a chance to talk with Intel and sort of better understand how things play out in Arizona versus sort of the R&D
Mhm.
model that exists up in Hillsboro.
Mhm.
And yeah, it was really a great conference or summit, I guess, one day,
Yeah.
but there was a lot of info there.
Mhm. Yeah. I mean, Arizona really was excited to talk about how amazing and collaborative and coordinated they are. I mean, the other thing that definitely was clear is that different states have different abilities to move things through in organized or fast manner. Every state is, like that, what's that saying? Every family is crazy in its own way. Every state has its own problems, right? And so, but what you do see is some states seem to be able to get information and get an alignment better and faster with how they're doing things than I would say Oregon does. And so that was something that we noticed. And I think it has a big impact on states' ability to execute these projects in a efficient and large scale way. So that's my thought about it. All right. We'll move on the agenda, and I believe next on the agenda is the member agreements. Is that right? Because I've moved my thing. Are you
Yeah,
looking at the agenda?
Ashley, Sherry, for the visual folks, do you want Ashley to bring that document up?
Yeah, that would be great because I don't really work in Teams or yeah, Teams. That would be awesome. All right. And if anybody, ooh, can you make that a little bigger?
Yeah, Ashley, can you make it one page?
Yeah,
Zoom in.
that's tiny,
There you
tiny.
go.
There we go. Oh, no, the others, the bigger, a little bit bigger was great for me. There we go. So the goal here, and some of you may remember this, that we came up with some member agreements, and the goal was to think about our culture as a board and to memorialize what that culture looks like and how we agree to um, show up with each other in our internal and external interactions and just have something that we can touch back base on. So the first is W, and you'll ultimately notice it does WTDB, but if you want to scroll up a bit, yeah, so work collaboratively. So a willingness to collaborate, commit to working together, leveraging the diverse expertise and perspectives of each board member to address workforce challenges comprehensively. The other W we had was wisdom sharing, promote the exchange of knowledge and lessons learned to enhance the board's collective intelligence and decision-making process. And then the third is actually an E, but it's under W, so it's still under work collaboratively, but engagement and participation, actively participate in board discussions and activities, showing commitment to the board's mission and responsibilities. So the next is T, which is doing double duty with transparency and trust. Transparency in actions and decisions, ensure that all board activities and decisions are conducted openly, which we are legally required to do. Fostering trust among members and with the public. Trust building, commit to actions that build and maintain trust both within the board and the extent and external stakeholders, understanding that trust is foundational to effective collaboration and public confidence. And then again, we got an outlier here, respect and civility, treat all members with respect, fostering an environment of civility and mutual appreciation. And then we got D, which is something that we've talked about a lot, which is being data driven in our decision making. Data utilization, agree to base decisions on reliable data, research, and evidence, ensuring that actions are targeted and effective in meeting the workforce needs of Oregonians. Dedication to outcomes, focus on setting and achieving measurable goals to reflect real positive changes in workforce development. And accountability, hold oneself and each other accountable for commitments and responsibilities, recognizing that accountability strengthens the board's effectiveness and credibility. And then B, which is bold and innovative. Boldness in vision and action, encourage taking calculated risks and innovative approaches to overcome workforce challenges, pushing beyond traditional boundaries to find effective solutions. Betterment, embrace a mindset of continuous improvement, seeking always to learn, adapt, enhance the board's strategies and outcomes in workforce development. So we got one more. Beneficial. We got another little outline there. Beneficial innovations. Pursue innovations that have clear benefits for Oregon's workforce, including new technologies, partnerships, and strategies that can lead to substantial improvements in workforce development. Is there anything else down there? That's it. Okay. So you want to scroll back up. So does anybody have any thoughts or input about this? I mean, we did share it at the time broadly, but now we're just kind of ourselves in it. It'll be in our materials each time we have a meeting to kind of guide us. It's not like a punishment or somebody was naughty or anything like that. It's like, the only way you really share and create culture is to communicate what your expectations are and to people say, well, I didn't know what the board, So this way we have culture we're culture loading, as they might say. So yeah, any thoughts or suggestions,
I
reflections?
like it, Shuri. I think it's really nicely put together. And I think it's a good reminder for everyone. So I like it.
Thank you. Anybody else? Anybody? All right. You want to go to the next document? The next document we have that will be coming up.
And Sherry, can I just jump in really quick on a
Yeah.
bit of housekeeping we neglected to mention. Ann Mercer Rowe is
I did.
actually. Oh, you already did. Okay,
I did.
I missed it. Okay,
I
thank
did
you.
say that, right? Did people hear me say Ann's off?
Okay,
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 they did.
great. Sorry, I
All
missed
right.
it.
No, that's okay. I'm moving along, Todd. I'm moving things through. So the next is roles and responsibilities, the final on that. Do you have that you can bring up? So I'm not going to read through every bit of this, but let's go back up to the top so we just see the headings first for a minute. Yeah, so the main categories we wanted to give folks who've been on the board a while, who are new to the board, because it is overwhelming. There's like all this conversation, and it's like, okay, what are we supposed to be doing? We just wanted to outline the work and the categories. So advise and assist the governor is part of what we do. Accountability. There is some budget, but not in the traditional budget sense. Okay, so not in the sense that we are the final stop in authorizing budgets. And then board operations. So this document is a summary of our roles and responsibilities. So if you want to scroll down now. So as you'll see, there's several bullet points, really outlining specifically how we advise and assist the governor, how we as a board, what is our goals, what we have to have in place, what our relationship is to funding. These are questions that people have quite a bit. I know when they join the board, I know I did. I know people are like, wait, what is this? What am I supposed to be doing? And the number one thing to know and to understand is that we're required under the Workforce Innovation and Opportunity Act, otherwise known as WIOA, which is another thing we're still working on, not always using acronyms, but using the phrase so people can tie it. And the Oregon Revised Statutes, ORS 660.321 to 660.326. And Continuous Improvement Committee from Senate Bill 623 from the Future Ready Oregon Bill. But we do operate under statute. We know we do operate under law. So it's not that we just are a bunch of nice people who want to, be on the board, but there are necessary things that the board is to accomplish. And as you can see, the advice and assist the governor has a long list. And then the second area, which I can actually see here, accountability. Those are like, you can see those are the lion's share of the work and the responsibilities that the board has. And then board operations, of course, is functional, maintain board membership, hire a director, operate committee work, that type of thing. Develop and issue guidance regarding one-stop infrastructure funding. I mean, the budget part is tricky, really, because we do not have the power of the purse. And, they shouldn't be sending me out to other places, because then I find out that other places do, but but other boards do have the power of the purse, but we don't. So our role is influence. We do have some, funding that we do, but it's not in the traditional sense, right, of the entire workforce system. So really looking at the accountability and the advise and assist the governor roles will help give you as a board member, new or otherwise, a better sense of what we are to be doing and why we do things the way we do. And again, this material will be in the packages, the board packets, hopefully every time we have a meeting, because I just don't think you can have the information too much. Everybody's busy, your brain is like kicking things out every 5 minutes because got to kick something else in. So keeping the information handy and available to me is very helpful. And I don't know what other folks think, but yeah. So any questions about this or folks who've been on a while, anything you can say to new folks about this? Yeah.
Sherry, it looks like Ben has his hand up.
Oh, yes, go ahead. Sorry, I couldn't see it.
Yeah, no worries. No, thanks. Look, I think this is a really important and useful document, and I really appreciate the staff for putting it together. Um, I wonder, I mean, I'd encourage us or encourage the staff to think of this as a draft. I think there are ways that it can continue to be improved. And let me just mention a couple of thoughts that crossed my mind. Um, Maybe this is covered by the advise slash assist the governor, but I'm thinking about the role of the board in helping advise and assist other state entities, including other boards and commissions, including the HEC. But there are other, agencies and boards and commissions where I think the WTDB has the opportunity and maybe the responsibility to provide advice, information, recommendations. And perhaps that's, I mean, I think a lot of that is reflected, or a lot of the ways in which the WTDB can advise are reflected in that first column. So it may just be a matter of sort of noting in the heading that it's advising and assisting the governor, but also other parts of the executive branch, right? Um, that also raised the question to me about the role of the WTDB, and this is like truly a legitimate question. The role of the WTB in terms of advising the legislature, I think probably we've tended to think that the WTDB is really working through the governor in order to advise the legislature, and that's true really of all executive branch boards. Technically and formally, we're working through the governor when we're working with the legislature, but it may at the same time be worth noting that there is an opportunity, even if it's sort of through the governor, it is to also provide information and advice and recommendations potentially for the legislature. Um, a couple of other kind of substantive thoughts, and then a sort of formatting thing. On the accountability section and possibly throughout, I think there are ways that greater specificity, or perhaps just um, it may be like a terminology, like a glossary that goes with this, because there are references to specific um, funding streams, specific programs that uses language that longtime board members and staff will be familiar with, but others, it's kind of hard to get your head around. Well, what does it mean to develop and continuously improve the one-stop delivery system in local areas, right? Like, what's the one-stop delivery system, right? So again, it may be a companion document that provides some of those, references, like what does that mean? Sherry, you called out the power of the purse, or lacking the power of the purse, and yet the first bullet under the funding section actually refers to developing allocation formulas. I'm familiar with these formulas, or aware of these formulas. It isn't obvious to me, and may again be my own ignorance, but it isn't obvious to me exactly what the role of the board is,
Right.
statutorily or by practice in the development of those formulas. I see them, and I think I see them ultimately as recommendations to the governor again. So there's, again, could just be my confusion here, but I think it's an opportunity for greater clarity there. And then final thing I'll say, and this is a little bit more about formatting, but it connects with some of my prior comments too. It would take some work, but I think this document would benefit from being footnoted with the statutory references where those are appropriate, or where these are drawn from statute, partly because it would allow a board member, a partner, if they had the kinds of questions that I may have about some of these, or others may have, like, go to the source, right? Like, what section of statute is this? Where did that authority or that responsibility come from? Because I think the note at the bottom indicates, broadly the areas of law from which this is drawn. And you I think rightly, Sherry said, this is a board that is a creature of Oregon law, and its responsibilities are assigned to it by law. So I think it would benefit from, being even more specific about where those statutory directives reside in Oregon law.
Yeah, well, I do like that. And Todd, on this particular document, on that allocation formulas, did that come from language, or did it come from previous information under budget? Do you know?
I think it was probably a combination. Sherry, as you know, we've had this document for quite some time, and I honestly don't remember the detail, but I knew
Okay.
that, I know generally that the board does, approve the policy, and sometimes we hear from, our unit leader in Julia Steinberger in terms of what's happening with distribution of funding as it relates to the allocation formula. But thanks for all that, Ben. I have taken notes, and Clay is here with me in the meeting, and we were just talking, and we're happy to take all this under advisement and update this to the next iteration with the good comments that you've made, Ben. So thank you. Looks like David has his hand up.
Oh, is that who? I can only see like JK in a little box. Who's that?
I think that's me.
Okay.
Okay, thanks, Sherry. Thanks, Todd. Yeah, I was just going to call out one more area where I think there is a statutory duty that frankly probably could use some discussion, because I think the statutes are not terribly clear. In the statute that kind of defines this board, 660.324, section 6A talks about this board being the primary advisory committee to the Employment Department in conjunction with the Employment Department Advisory Council. I don't know that I've ever known what it means to be a primary advisor in conjunction with another separate group. Historically, what we've done is we keep the advisory council informed of all of our activities, but focus a lot less on the workforce development, workforce operations side, and tend to bring those matters here. But that is something, as we're revisiting these kind of governance documents, might be worth some discussion, and to see if the board wants to be more active or have more intentional crossover with our advisory council.
Okay.
That's
good.
really good. That's really good, David. It makes me think of Ken Madden. I don't know. Ken's had that question for many years. I don't know if you want to jump in on that, Ken, at all.
Well, just going to prior administrations, I know all meetings, especially all board meetings, the topics were kind of a combination of a sit down between the chair, the policy advisor for the governor, and the director of the employment department. And a lot of times we had the director give a report out to the board on what was new. And again, well, I mean, there was times like there was a breach of security, and we were notified ahead of time, typically before the press release went out, and other issues. But that's going back to prior administrations and how it was handled. And then it changed in the last administration, and this one is still to be kind of determined. But we did have a more active role with the employment department at that time. So, I don't know if that's helpful or not.
No, that is helpful. Thank you. Thank you. I think the purpose of having this open discussion is exactly the feedback we're getting. Yes, we've gone through several iterations of this, but that doesn't mean we can't go through another. And it doesn't, it's important to bring this to folks. I personally love the idea of a glossary and tying specific things either through footnoting to the statutory space. I think that's super helpful. Me personally, I would find that helpful, and I'm sure others would. And I think clarification, I think being super clear from the budget tab or the budget column, what actually is in our legal purview. Yes. Ken.
Yeah, I was going to also follow. I forgot to mention this at the end of my spiel, but Ben's comments, Senator Demeraux during one of our planning meetings also suggested that we be the advisor to the legislative branch. And I know Todd and I had prior talked about how we become the leading authority on workforce issues for the state, just for all agencies, just like Ben was speaking about. Because if we operate in a bubble, isolated, legislators just seem to develop and want to develop other programs that kind of almost conflict with our mission in some ways, like the Talent Council and some of the other programs that have been pushed out there. So I do agree with Ben. I think we need to be looked at more as a leader or authority board when it comes to workforce issues, and to disseminate that out to the rest of the state.
I agree. I think part of the question we as a board had was where is our authority in that legislative space, right? Where can we go and how do we interact, and must we go through the governor? I think those are questions that we had. I'm sorry, the way my Teams is set up, I just cannot see things when I have something open. So I have CB.
Yeah, that's me.
Okay, and then
just,
Venkat.
Just quickly to follow Ken. I agree with Ken's perspective. I do think about the ideal role for the WTDB. I do think a document like this should be really tightly linked to its existing authorities and responsibilities, ideally as described by law, and then that can help to expose gaps, right? That can be a way to identify areas where it's like, whoa, actually, we think we should be the single point of authority or guidance or responsibility on workforce issues, and in certain ways we're not. It appears that we're not, right? Whether it's relative to the legislature or otherwise. So yeah, agree with Ken's perspective and want to just make sure that this document stays really pretty tightly focused on actual responsibilities.
Yeah. So we definitely shouldn't be, I'm sorry, we shouldn't be compiling elements that we think we do. We should be directing to things we statutorily do. Yes, sorry, Ken. And then
I was just going to say, under Governor Kitzhaber, when he was trying to expand our authority as a board, and he issued an executive order that actually kind of pushed that out to everybody. So it made it very clear. And maybe that's something even this board might want to consider down the road as a suggestion on an executive order for the governor to establish, the authority of the board to a higher level, if that's what we think the governor should do.
Venkat?
Thanks, Jerry. I was tying the bold and innovative from the previous document from our roles and responsibilities. And if we come up with some bold and innovative strategies, some of which can be solved with policy changes. Obviously, the governor's channel is the right way to do it. But if some of them require legislative action, then I think it's important to have some legislative champions on our side, depending on the policy. But I think where we wanted to be was we were going to have 2 legislators, one from either party on the board. So maybe that is something that we should try to get for these meetings, and depending on the idea, we can get their advice on who those legislative champions will be, and move forward that way.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's important. We have had those people on the board, but I also think it's important for us to consider what our role is in moving ideas ourselves. And yes, Ken, and then we have to go to Todd and move on, because Ann would not be happy, but I'm behind on my agenda. Yes.
I'll be very brief. I think legislation, I mean, the act actually calls for those legislative personnel to be on this board, one from both the House and from the Senate, from each party.
And we've had that in the past.
Yeah, we just don't participate for the most part. I mean,
that's right.
We've had the Democratic Party, and we've had one active member of the House over my tenure, but the rest don't seem to want to show from time to time. And I know, they're active as well in their day jobs, so it conflicts with our board meetings at time. But it is helpful when they are in attendance.
Yeah, but as we develop and we have clarity about our direct role, I think, you know, it will give them some more meat to tie into as to why they are here with us. So, but Todd, I'm going to have you do the WTDB standards on decision making. And then you have the ability to get us back on track for when Coraggio is showing up, because we're only about 10 minutes behind. So.
Yeah, that's all good. And really quickly before we leave the conversation, um, all this is right about legislative involvement. Just as a reminder, we lost Senator or are losing Senator Dembro to retirement. I think his last month is next month, and he's done. He's been a very engaged board member over his career and has been on the WTDB for quite some time. And we're going to miss his leadership. Obviously, many of you remember Rep. Reardon. He was very engaged in the work of the Workforce Board, responsible several years back for House Bill 3437, which added to the ORS and roles and responsibilities document that you saw that Clay and I pulled together several years ago. And yes, everything that you said, Ken. That being said, there are some positive developments that I just wanted to briefly share. Many of you know that Sarah Foster, who used to be lead on the healthcare consortia under Future Ready here at the, took over the role of the policy advisor that's responsible for workforce, labor, and I think maybe education, I forget, but at least workforce and labor. We did, Ann and I, get an email from her yesterday, I believe, asking after the GRB work that she's deeply involved in is sort of wound down. In the next couple of weeks, she wants to meet with us and have a conversation. She is also aware of the fact that we're down 3. We, as Ken said, we need 2 on the House side, 2 on the Senate side to be on the board. We're down basically 3 right now. Rep. Pham is on the WTDB. He's a newer member, but very engaged and wants to participate and help the efforts of the board. So more to come on all that, but I think there again are some positive developments there, and we hope that Sarah can help get us back to full complement of the full 4 legislators in the not too distant future. Okay, so moving on to the next bit of business. As you remember, back in the September WTDB meeting, I think it was Kim Parker who suggested that we develop a framework around action and decision making for the State Workforce Board. And
Ashley, can we bring, I'm sorry, Todd, Ashley, can we bring up the framework? Do you have that? We can take this other down. Thank you.
Yep, it's there.
Thanks, Sherry. Can everybody see it?
Yes, we can see it now.
I'll take that as a yes. Feel free to jump in, Sherry, if it needs to be adjusted, and Ashley will do it. But nonetheless, at the September board meeting, our marching orders as staff were to go and pull something together and then bring it back for input conversation, which we did at our October exec committee meeting. We went through it, shared the information, and had a conversation. And then, as many of you might remember, we had a presentation from Stacy Green with Mentor Match Teen Entrepreneurship Program over in Frontier, Oregon. And then after that, we pulled this up and asked all of you to work through it using that program and sort of, score it and then provide back to Ann and I feedback in terms of how it worked, what your thoughts were. We did get a handful of responses after that in terms of what folks thought. And some of those had to do with format, some of those had to do with content, and then there were others that sort of touched on process. So you can sort of see that. Can you zoom in a little bit on that, Ashley, so it can be read by folks? They don't have to pull it up there. I think that sort of does it. So as far as format, we tried to make that part B where it says in blue, partner commitments to specific actions, a little bit more intuitive when you get ready to go to please check mark the box or boxes to the right that apply to your work as a key partner. So who are you? Are you an employer? Are you from the Gov's office, OWP, et cetera? Just to indicate, your space. And oh, by the way, I know we're short on time. I sort of skipped over the scoring criteria, but you all thought, I think, generally that all of the scoring criteria made sense, and that when you ran the mentor match program through it, pretty much applied. And again, the intention here, I mean, Sherry shared those agreements up front because a lot of what was called out in those agreements sort of applies to this tool, right? How can we make more informed, data-driven decisions and then take action? Is sort of the reason for its being. And to tie that to the strategic plan, our joint priorities, talent summit priorities, governor's priorities, and the added few there. So format-wise, in addition to that check box change, you can see, if you remember, when you get down to 3, 4, 5, and 6 on the part B, okay, great, you're an employer and you've agreed to contribute. What are you going to do in terms of funding? Specifically, what do you commit to? What do you commit to in terms of maybe staffing capacity, resources, or other things? So that pretty much captures everything that we got back in terms of feedback. Additionally, well, a couple other things I haven't mentioned. Down at the bottom in terms of what you see in as far as pages to the spreadsheet, in addition to this, the next tab over, I think maybe this was Venkat's idea, we need a sheet that, and this maybe goes first, is instructions on using the tool. We wanted to wait until this conversation before we populated that. And then also a space for reviewers' comments. So moving on to content, some of the feedback that we got around content sort of was about the weighting on the scoring. If you could go back up to the top, Ashley. So generally, like I said, people thought that all 9 of these were relevant. We did get feedback on weighting things. So and maybe we got some feedback. I think yes, we got feedback on number 9 around the legislative strategy. So do we want to weight them all equally? Maybe not when it comes to legislative strategy. If, for example, we have a great best practice and we think and feel after running that best practice as an executive committee through this tool that it warrants, action right away, do we really want to include legislative strategy at the same weight as the others to potentially, right? If it was scored low, wouldn't that skew the overall score lower to where it could potentially end up requiring no action or adding to the watch list, as you can see in that gray highlighted area that we talked about previously in that 6 to 8 category. So there was the weight question. There was, do we want to include necessarily that number 9 on legislative strategy? Was kind of related. And that's about all we got back in terms of feedback, like I said, from a handful of folks on content. Moving on to process, there was conversations and emails going back and forth with a few folks around, okay, this is great. Now let's, forward think on it. if we were to take that mentor match and not just sort of pilot and beta test this thing, and we actually were to run it through, you know, what things would determine that we would run that through? Why would we run mentor match through this and not another best practices? What would be the process to predetermine that? Is it a number? Do we take, okay, we'll allow 2 or 3 of these every executive committee and every you know, full board meeting to come forward? And if so, how do they get determined? Is 3 the right number? Right, those kinds of questions. Should they be pitches or presentations? Should they align with the work that we've also been sharing with you over the last several meetings around shifting the strategic innovation grants from a typical RFP, RFA process to one that's more of a pitch and an actual real-time scoring of those applications? And then, yeah, sort of the cadence. Do we do it every meeting, every exec meeting, every full board meeting? So those were the things that came up around process. I'll pause there, Sherry, and would love to hear what people think.
Yeah, let's get people's feedback. And I was traveling or something when this got finalized. And so I have a question, which is, do the folks who are evaluated see this? Do we show them some version of this? I'm just confused about that.
So the people that doing the evaluation, do they see this?
No, who we are about the project or let's say like the group came before us and we did the scoring. Do they see what the scoring is?
Oh, good question. I don't think we really talked about that. I thought that ultimately, since, you know, we have to be, you know, open, public, and transparent about it, that they would have the opportunity to see it, to know what they were going to be scored against, to
that's my question.
enrich their proposal. So yeah, I thought so, but I'm not sure what everybody else thought.
The other question I had, and I don't mean to hog it, other people can definitely ask questions, was, is this adding additional burden on our members? I mean, in other words, do we want to use it in a very strategic way, not willy-nilly all the time, you know, that kind of thing? So that's just a question I have.
Exactly.
But I see.
Soundarya, I have a question.
Okay, thank you. I tell you that when you get used to different formats, when documents are opened on my whatever this is we're on here, Teams, I can't see people well. But when I'm on Zoom, I can. But anyway, go ahead. Sorry, I'm just struggling to see people.
Yeah, no worries. So I guess I had a question. So last time, you know, Todd, I was only part of when we went through it with the last team that presented, right? I felt like she didn't actually understand, like, these were going to be the questions that were going to be asked, right? For example, if you scroll down to that B, the partner commitments to specific actions, I feel like this is going to be filled out by the person that we are evaluating, right? This section B. That's how I understood it.
No, well, I think what we're envisioning is that those people scoring that would fill that out. So if you were scoring as an employer, you would not only fill out part A up top and score them, but then move down as a partner and commit, assuming that they scored 8.5 or higher and it warranted action. You as a partner then would go to part B, check employer, and then make commitments based on the level that you and your organization were willing to commit funding, match other funding, you know, staffing capacity if relevant, or your time, other resources, et cetera. So yeah, it wasn't that the person presenting would fill that out. It would be that the person on the WTDB scoring using the tool would complete that part.
Yeah, so no, that was completely lost on me because I think we were all trying to get used to the form anyway last time. And so if the intent is for, you know, people evaluating it, then I'm guessing that some people might be employers, some may be part of STEM or like different organizations, right? That's what you're envisioning, depending on the partnership.
Yes, I think that's right generally. But it would be, I think the lion's share of the time, this is just the vision I have in my head currently. It doesn't have to be this way. Just the thing I'm thinking, Sundarya, is that it would be WTDB members primarily, or WTDB committee members or full board, yeah, or exec members, right? Sherry, it looks like Venkat has his hand up.
Yeah, I see Venkat and David. So Venkat and then David.
David's number one.
Go ahead, Venkat, it's fine.
Oh, okay. Just a quick question, Todd. So every board member is required to score programs, or only voting members? Is there a distinction of who fills this out?
Yeah, I think that's a decision that, you as members could make. I hadn't thought about that, Venkat, but seems to me you could do either. You could have board members and ex officios participate, but obviously only voting members would be able to approve or not.
David?
And a couple quick thoughts. Sorry if I'm repeating things a little bit, but I'll try to not get us off schedule. On the question 9 about legislative, supporting legislative agenda, maybe it's as easy as saying if necessary, so that if it's something that can move forward but doesn't really require legislative action, that doesn't skew how important or support worthy the rating makes it. I do think that question about kind of who's filling this out is one to explore, and it could, I know the original discussion, I'm sorry I missed the last meeting, was that this would not be done in a rote mechanical way, that this was going to advise decisions. So maybe it is something that we could have all members, but the understanding is that it's advisory to help guide the decision making when we're prioritizing what to do and what actions to take. And my only other comment is I think it could be helpful if we ask people to identify what the challenges are that might happen with implementing it, so that we don't all see the great promise and someone is sitting there seeing some real barriers that we could help overcome without flagging that early on, just to help that we're, if it is something that we think is important, that everyone can be focused on the right things from the beginning.
Hey, Sherry,
Kim?
this is Kim.
Yep,
Yeah,
Kim,
thanks. I was just gonna ask Todd can you kind of walk us through how this worked? Because we did it, we sort of tested the tool after our last meeting. Can you talk about how it worked and how people responded? Just as an example.
Yeah, that's a great question, Kim, and thank you so much for your response. I wished honestly that we had gotten more response from y'all, but I did get responses, and I don't want to call out names or anything, but I think generally we've covered off everything. Yours was pretty positive, Kim. I think generally they were all pretty positive, and of course. I think was first, that doesn't surprise any of you, I'm sure, that she responded right away. She thought that it first sort of beta test of it was good, but was really wanting to better understand what everybody's thinking was in this meeting. Unfortunately, she is obviously not here today and spending some vacation time with her daughter from out of town. So I think we've covered off what David has shared, was also received, but I think generally, Kim, folks were pretty positive. I think there still were these questions about how often do we use it, what's the process, what are the challenges, but I can't really think of anything else that popped up in the feedback.
Well, here is something, because I was missing for the part of this this piece of it that I'm concerned about. So number one, I think Soundharia mentioned that, making sure the person knew what they were being judged on, because I did feel like for that session, the person was actually offered something that was relevant, actually by Anne, from the list of assessment, but didn't seem to value that. The person had a very specific thing they wanted, it sounded like to me, which was, how are you going to help me fund my thing? Not how are you going to
Yep.
help me any other way? And
I
I'm
think
very
that's true.
worried that if this is the tempo of the sessions, that it becomes people who are thinking they're going to get funding from the board writ large, not assistance from a particular board member or help in understanding something, or you know what I mean? And I'm really worried about managing expectations. That's number one. And number two is I am concerned about the extra burden on board members. Again, it needs to be really, I think, used in a very strategic way when it's something we really, especially considering Part B, because I was also confused by Part B. I thought the people filled that out. So if that's something that board members are supposed to step up and provide, I mean, we really got to make sure that people are in a space to do that at that time, or, otherwise it becomes a perfunctory, everybody gets in Part A, everybody gets good grades, but there's never a Part B follow-up, which would be very disappointing for people. So that's my, kind of, for travel reasons, I kind of came in late to this particular process. So I don't know what others think, but that's kind of where I landed.
Yeah, I think you're right on. I think we need to make sure it doesn't add, like, it's strategically done. It's well understood for everyone. And, we were just trying it out last time, so I'm sure there's more tweaks to be done. Otherwise it'll become like a, good grades for everyone, like you said, or mismatched alignment expectations, right? The people that are coming in are going to be like not expecting X and getting Y out of it and not being happy with it.
Yeah, that's really good. Thank you for all that. I've captured everything here in notes, and Clay and I'll take another try at things to incorporate these and try to make the Part B clearer. And I'll also just say, Sherry, I think the expectation was, okay, if there's consensus on how people score this, then the expectation for board members and partners that they represent is that they need to take action. And so the hope in Part B was to, force action and sort of, I guess as you think forward on it, if a particular partner time and time again were to say, no, there's nothing that we can do to commit to this, then does that warrant a conversation? Does that warrant, peeling back the layers of the onion to better understand the why behind that? Again, with the goal of using data and information to drive decision making and ultimately implementation and action.
Well, Todd, I mean, I think that gets to the specificity of the board, right? So I'm on a lot of boards, and boards are very clear coming on what your give-get is, right? So Anne was in this very specific position with PGE around her ability to utilize some of their resources for certain things. Other folks in different businesses, organizations have to compete with other priorities within that organization. That's just what it is. And so I think this again goes to that clash of what does the board writ large, the WTDB as a state board, have financial authority to do versus what does it look like to shift that responsibility to individual board members and their organizations. I would be a bit concerned about that. And I think we have to be really clear about when we're doing that, why we're doing that, And is it actually within the scope of what our legislative intent is with the board? I mean, that I'm a bit worried about that, me personally. So I don't know how others feel about that, but you know, that type of thing falls under the give get in my mind, whatever you call it. And give getting is very specific for board members in the private sector, but different in the public sector. And then consequently, we are on a state board that has legislative authority and should have some funding capacity to do certain things. So now we run back into that issue. So
yeah.
that's my concern. But we
Thank
can
you.
have that conversation more detailed later, but you know.
Well, just to do it for me, Sherry, if this makes sense to you, we'll try to incorporate the comments that have been made and the suggestions into another iteration, and then I can connect with you and maybe have a conversation and see what your thoughts are at that point.
Yeah, and let's look at what our board bylaws say. I mean, you know, this really does get into what are we legally doing here, you know, and what do we ask people when they come on? And I think we do have to be careful about that. So yeah, let's talk about that.
Okay, thank you.
So do we have our presenters on? Because we're right on time. We're just 3 minutes ahead.
This is Susan Krosky on behalf of Coraggio Group. I believe I am up
Okay.
next on the agenda.
Outstanding. Okay. Well, thank you, Susan. If you'd like to introduce yourself more fully and tell us what you're going to be talking about, the floor is yours.
Thank you. Thank you. Hello, everyone. My name is Susan Krosky. I'm here on behalf of Coraggio Group. We are the partner organization that has been working with the Continuous Improvement Committee on the 2024 assessment that will be coming forward to the WTDB at your December 13th meeting and forwarded on to the governor as part of the requirement of the law that established the Continuous Improvement Committee. My hope here today, I've got about 15 minutes now, maybe I've got 17 minutes on the agenda. What I'm here today to do is to share with you a little bit about the progress of our work to date and some key insights of the report that you will be seeing in a few weeks. So Ashley, I believe you had just flashed up the presentation. If you want to flash it back up, I'll get started in sharing a bit of context and update here for the executive committee. If you can just scroll down to the next slide, Ashley, that'd be great. Here's a quick timeline of our process. We have been working in partnership with the Continuous Improvement Committee since July. And we had 3 phases. One was just to do project alignment and getting onboarded. Our second task was to actually conduct the assessment. And I'll talk a little bit about more the scope of the assessment. We did some best practice gathering. We did some partner outreach and did some work sessions with the Continuous Improvement Committee to develop a set of recommendations. We are now in the process of reviewing and refining the report with the Continuous Improvement Committee. They have a meeting next Monday, and the hope is that they will finalize and finish the report, and then it will come to the WTDB for your review and hopeful approval on December 13th. Just so you know, I mean, we've been working kind of lockstep with the Continuous Improvement Committee to develop the approach to the assessment, conduct the assessment, hear their thoughts on the recommendations. So if you could go to the next slide, that'd be great. Thank you. Kind of the essence of our approach has been, if you follow a continuous improvement cycle, has been where the star is, the check approach. As you may or may not know, the Continuous Improvement Committee did an initial assessment in 2021. They did a follow-up governance assessment in 2022. So in true form to lean methodology, we have been checking how those recommendations from both the initial assessment and the governance assessment have been going. You know, what improvements have been in place? Is there data to determine if the improvement is working? If they do have data, what's the data indicate? and then what needs to happen next to continue the continuous improvement cycle of continuing for the continuous improvement committee to continue to act. So a big part of the assessment that you'll be seeing is kind of a look back at both the initial assessment and the governance assessment with through the lens of check, what happened, how did they do? And then the second part of the assessment that you'll be seeing in prep for your conversation on the 13th is specifically what are the recommendations that the KIC is putting forward to continue that ACT cycle. Ashley, if you could go to the next slide, please. So our partner outreach approach included interviews and focus groups. That slide looks a little wonky. My apologies for that. You can kind of see who the interviews and focus group, who our partner organizations were. We also did some additional state benchmarking of best practices with Michigan, Colorado, Texas, Florida, and Kentucky. Many of those states were part of the governance assessment benchmarking, so it was a continuation of the conversation and the insights we had gathered from the initial governance assessment. If you could go to the next slide, please. Thank you. So we had 5 states that we benchmarked with and 23 interviews. And I apologize, these slides look really off. I don't know why. They look fine on my screen. So you can see a little bit about the topics there of what we talked about. Thanks. And both for the benchmarking topics, as an example, we talked about kind of the WIOTA tile funding. We looked at local, regional, state operating models. What does it mean to be a high-performing state workforce board and how performance is managed? And also the role of the governor and the legislature. Our interview topics focused on, again, thinking about some of the things we heard from the initial assessment and the governance assessment. Had improvements been made in the intake process? Where have there been some improvements to the IMatch? If you can just scroll down a little bit, Ashley, that'd be great. And WIOA funding and some of the other specific improvements. Here's just 3 kind of headlines of the insights from kind of that look back, that check in the Plan, Do, Check, Act cycle. The good news is some improvements have been made within the system. What we learned is also that the system continues to struggle to make large-scale improvements. And there was general consensus from the Continuous Improvement Committee that a strategic shift needs to happen to drive a different level of improvements within the system. I'm just going to go ahead and go through these last few slides and we'll open it up for questions, thoughts, comments. One of the things we talked about with the Continuous Improvement Committee, if you can scroll down a little bit, Ashley, is what level of change do they desire to make within the WorkSource Oregon system? And we gave them a change continuum. We said, you know, you can make some incremental changes, do what you do, but do it a little bit better. You can plan to make a little bit more transformational change. How do you want to change the goals and assumptions to better serve the customers? Or do you want to try to make some disruptive change that's really putting some of the goals, vision, and assets at risk to better serve the customers? So in the context of our work with the Continuous Improvement Committee, we asked them, what level of change do you desire to make within the WorkSource Oregon system? You can go to the next, scroll down a little bit, Ashley, would appreciate that. And we talked about various levels of change levers. We talked about the customer experience. We talked about performance accountability. Can you scroll down a little bit more, Ashley? There. System structure and policies governing the system. So within each of those systems change levers, we asked the Continuous Improvement Committee, what level of change would you want for each? There was some good discussion, debate, dialogue back and forth amongst the Continuous Improvement Committee members, and they came up with a set of 4 recommendations that you'll be seeing in the report you'll be receiving prior to your December 13th meeting. One is establish a governor mandate regarding system transformation. Second is to create greater alignment between the state, local workforce boards and define the related authority, roles, and responsibilities. The third is to unify and consolidate reporting on a system-wide performance metrics. And 4, explore reorganizing the state level reorg programs and funding structures. These 4 recommendations kind of go across the continuum of more transformational and disruptive change. In the report that you'll be seeing that the Continuous Improvement Committee will be putting forward will be more detail and context behind these 4 recommendations, the context of why, and the specific action plans that they're developing in order to move their recommendations forward. That's a really, really quick high-level overview. Just next steps are, we've got this meeting with the KIC to discuss the report on Monday. We plan to submit the full report to the WTDB on December 6th. We then are going to be coming with members of the KIC to discuss the report on your December 13th meeting, with the hope that the report will be ready to go to the governor on December 15th. I know that was a really quick overview of our work to date. I'd love to open it up to people, to folks on questions, thoughts, comments on our work to date and what you might be seeing in preparation for the December 13th meeting.
Yes, thank you for that. We do have some time for questions before our next presentation. So thank you for your quickness. I appreciate it, but we do have some time for questions. Ken?
Yeah, I just a clarification. When the report mentioned customer satisfaction, who are they referring to? Is the applicants looking for work or for the businesses utilizing the system?
Thanks for the question, Ken. The customer, as defined by the Continuous Improvement Committee, is both the job seeker, those are the folks looking for work, and the employers, those are the ones looking to find qualified employees for the work. So the customer includes both the job seeker and employer. Ken, did I answer your question?
Yeah, that was great. I appreciate it. Thank you.
Thanks for the question, Ken. I believe we've also got a question.
David?
David?
Yeah.
Thanks. Yeah, Susan, this is wonderful, and I know this is really high level, so I look forward to getting the full report. I think my question was just making sure that the full report kind of hits the topics that are in the statute about the scope of the assessment, looking at the different programs, like looking at the impact on equitable outcomes for communities and things like that, to make sure that when the WTDB gets the full report, that it has what the statute says we should be looking at.
Yeah, thank you, David. I'll go back and look at the report and make sure that the scope is clear on that, if that makes sense, just so that you have that context. I've been in the report multiple times, but I just need to cross check and make sure that that's there. Thank you for that.
Sure. Yeah, thank you.
Hey, David, Todd, real quick here. Are there other things that in particular you could flag for Susan to keep a lookout for, or is that just your general observation?
Just a general kind of observation question. I know last time there were some things in terms of the funding where it was really looking at just the state level. And I think the statute talks about looking at all the state partners and the local boards. And when I look at the statute, it really, to me, looks like it's trying to get at an assessment of how programs administered by all the partners are going. And I get this is the high level overview, so by nature it's kind of high level. But besides those kind of higher level things, if there are assessments, if there's something like I saw something about IMET that's on there, which we are aware of and are working on actively. But if there are other things in the employment department programs that we should be focused on, we would certainly want to know that. And I think for the board to know where the areas of programs that are working great, so they can be expanded, replicated, explore best practices, and where the data is showing that maybe programs need some improvement.
Todd, I don't know if you want to follow up on that. I have a thought, but I'll let you go first.
Let's follow up because I have some thoughts too. Just want to make sure we look after and address David's concerns. So let's connect after.
Okay, sounds great. Thank you.
Any other questions for right now? Okay, not hearing any. I want to thank you. Thank you so much for your time and for coming in and getting it done. We really appreciate the work that you all have done. And if you and Todd will connect, and if there are any other questions, we'll definitely let you know. Okay.
Great.
Thank
Thank you
you,
all. Look
Susan.
forward to seeing you on the 13th. Have a good
All
rest
right.
of your meeting.
Thank you, Susan.
Bye-bye.
All right. So now we have Eco Northwest Forestry Workforce Study Committee. And we're right on time, so they should be with us.
I think I saw Andrew join. Andrew, are you there?
Yes, I am. Yes, thank you. Yeah, just joined a couple
Okay.
minutes ago.
Yeah, thanks for being here.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yes, great. Okay, so Andrew, if you would introduce yourself, and then we'll turn it over to you.
Great, thank you. So I'm Andrew Dyke, and I know some of you from past projects and other work, but I'm an economist at Eco Northwest. I am leading the forestry workforce study, and Todd asked that we come and just present a few minutes on status of that project, where we are in the process, and I do want to save a few minutes just for discussion. We're still very much in, well, to some extent in planning mode and very much in data collection mode, and so interested in whether there are questions, concerns, comments from you all and from the WTDB perspective. And this is where I get nervous. I'm going to try to share my screen here. Oops, that's not what you want to see. Apologies. Okay, so I don't appear to be able to share my screen. Todd, I'm going to email you some slides if that works. Yep.
Yeah, if you just send me your deck, I can share it.
Great, and I'll start talking. There's not a lot to it, but I think it would be helpful.
Okay, yeah, thank you.
To bring that up. Yep. Okay, they are on the way. Yeah, so again, as those are coming up, I'll spend a few minutes just with the project overview, what we're trying to accomplish, then a few minutes on the project tasks we're going to engage in, and the timeline over which we're going to be completing the work. Give you a quick update on where we are. Punchline there is we're relatively early in the process. And then again, reserve a few minutes for some just discussion of some of the tasks.
Do we have the slides that we can share for you?
I just sent them to Todd.
Yeah, he just sent them to me,
okay.
Sherry.
Sorry,
Yeah.
just got confused.
Yep. So Todd, did you get those?
Well, there's the other rub. No, I have not gotten them yet. So it's likely firewall stuff, but
yep. Okay, well,
what
so
about
again,
Ashley? Can Ashley get them? This is why I use Teams, people.
Yeah.
I mean, this is why I don't use Teams. I'm sorry.
Yep.
This is why I use Zoom. Zoom is just intuitive. It moves, keeps it moving. Teams got too many issues.
Yeah, sorry about the Andrew. I still haven't gotten it. So when you tried to share, what happened? Were you not?
The only option I get is to share my window, which is the I think when that comes up is just a picture of your cells. Is that probably what you're saying?
I think what you have to do is you select yourself, but then just pull up the slides on over the top of your picture. You won't be able to see yourself, but you can see the slides.
Oh, who is in charge of the meeting? Can you make it so he can share? Yeah.
Okay. Are you looking at it now?
There we go.
Yes,
Yep.
there we are.
Oh, excellent.
Yes.
Okay. Well, I learned something today. That's
okay. Great. Thank you so much.
Yep. Absolutely. So let's make that a little bigger. Yeah. So just wanted to start with the key questions we're hoping to address here. This is primarily a work.
We lost the screen share again.
Ugh, okay.
So whatever you just did before that was great.
Do it again.
Made it bigger. There you go.
Yep. Okay.
That works.
So we're on board.
Now, are you able to advance?
You can see it really well.
Yeah. Are you able to advance the slide? Just
yes, I think so. I mean, I'll pause and make sure that happens. But
No, I just thought maybe we check it now to see if it disappears if you try to advance a slide. No, it's fine. So yeah, just
works?
keep it
Great.
as it is in advance. Yep. Mhm.
Okay, won't touch a thing except for the forward and backward. So in terms of what we're hoping to address, this is a forestry workforce study, but the first step really we need some sort of definition to answer some definitional questions. I think everybody probably has in their head some notion of what it means when we talk about the forestry sector, but we need to get precise if we're going to do any kind of analysis to it. So first question really is, what are the businesses, what are the entities that compose the forestry sector in Oregon? We're thinking relatively broad, we're not just thinking sort of forests as timber supply, logging, and so on. We're thinking about forest management. We're thinking about public sector agencies involved in forestry, and not just in terms of natural resource management, but also training providers, educational entities involved in potentially or actually training the forestry workforce. It's a big chunk of work there. Once we've defined the industry and sort of scaled it, sort of identifying how many employees, how many employers, how many agencies and other entities are there, we want to take a look, obviously, at the workforce. And so we'll spend a fair amount of time looking at the occupational characteristics of the workforce. What are the occupations that are most important? What are the skills involved? What are the credentials and training pathways necessary to successfully enter and progress in the forestry workforce? And what are the socioeconomic characteristics of the workforce to the best of our ability? We want to look at diversity by race and ethnicity, by gender, look at typical wages and salaries of the workforce, and so on, to really paint a pretty comprehensive picture of the forestry workforce. And the next couple of questions really get into, where are the bottlenecks and what do we do about it? So we'll spend some time looking at existing forestry-related education and training pathways in Oregon, public sector as well as potentially private sector, pathways that individuals can and often need to take to get into jobs in the forestry sector. Look at the capacity of those programs, look at some of the outcomes of completers of those programs to think about the alignment between what exists in a state today and both current and anticipated future needs for the forestry workforce, which leads into the next question. Main goal here is to come up with some recommendations that the state can pay attention to and potentially implement to improve conditions and sort of the education and training pathways for the forestry sector. We want to look into what the barriers employers face in terms of recruiting and retaining trained workers. What are the barriers that potential employees face in trying to access educational programs, training programs, licensing, et cetera? And what are the opportunities for improving the system along those dimensions? And then finally, stepping a little bit beyond sort of workforce, but we are going to have a component that looks at the community benefits of the forestry sector. Clearly, wages, jobs, economic opportunity from that perspective, but also from a broader perspective, economic development related to the forestry sector, recreational opportunities, the fact that clean water, and wildlife are associated with healthy forests, and take a look at those and try to characterize those. And that's sort of the meat. This is sort of the meat of what we're hoping to look at in terms of how we're doing it. As some of you may be aware, we've divided our work into 9 tasks. First couple are either done or almost done. We agreed reasonably to do a document review. We want to take advantage of existing research, existing reports from the state, from industry organizations such as OFRI, AOL, and so on, and really understand what people have done before so we can use that as an input to the process and not reinvent the wheel. We've formally kicked off the project. As you'll see in the next couple of slides, we had our first committee meeting with the FWSC. We received some good input in terms of how the study should unfold and suggestions for key contacts, data sources, et cetera. I'll talk a little bit more about that in a minute. Then we move into answering those key questions that I just posed. How do we define the industry? What are the characteristics of the entities involved in the industry and the sector, and the workers in particular? We've proposed and will do 2 more qualitative engagement rounds. You see in task 4 and in task 7. Task 4 really designed as sort of information gathering, setting the stage, current conditions, what are the problems, what are the issues, and maybe potential solutions. As we move into the second engagement phase, we will have completed a lot of our quantitative analysis, and we compare that with findings from our initial engagement, and go back to some of the same entities as well as a different set of entities to see what from those findings resonate, start to test potential solutions to barriers, potential opportunities for scaling up successful activities in the state in terms of workforce development, really moving into the last couple of tasks, which are developing those what we hope to be and need to be really actionable recommendations that we'll package up into a report and any necessary presentations. In terms of timeline, this is slightly out of date. This is the timeline we showed the committee, the advisory committee a couple of weeks ago. Things have shifted a little bit, but not too much. This gives you a general sense of where we're headed. Again, first couple of tasks largely done. We're currently working on data collection for that task 3, define the sector, sort of size it and understand what's out there and some of the characteristics. We're developing our plan for the initial engagement. And then as we move towards the end of the year into the beginning of 2025, we'll be diving deeply into the quantitative analysis. What does the workforce look like across the state, within subregions of the state, and sort of the demographic profile. Program analysis is looking at existing programs, again, whether they're traditional or post-secondary programs through community colleges, universities, private sector training programs, less formal opportunities, et cetera, looking at that, and then the remaining, that second round of engagement, recommendations, and reporting. So what have we done to date? Again, we had our first FWSC meeting. That's the advisory committee on the 24th. Some of that's just sort of administrative nuts and bolts. We established a regular cadence for the committee meetings. We've scheduled independent check-ins with the co-chairs and with HEC staff, Todd and Doug Denning. We submitted a revised work plan on November 7th, and that's really an elaboration of our proposal material and some of the things I mentioned in the prior couple of slides. In addition, we detailed our approach to collecting the quantitative data we need for the analysis. I will say more so than for many similar studies, the forestry workforce has a lot of less traditional pathways, and we'll have to go to less traditional sources for information. We will typically, for example, use a lot of information from the Bureau of Labor Statistics, from the Oregon Employment Department. And again, more so than for some industries, the pictures that those two entities can provide with their data is going to be less complete. So we're needing to go beyond the usual sources. And part of the work plan was also a quantitative data collection plan, or sorry, qualitative. The current work in progress, what are we up to now? Again, wrapping up our document and data review, trying to evaluate data sources that we're aware of or that have been suggested by committee members and others to, again, sort of help round out that picture of this sector and its workforce in ways not possible with sort of more standard data sources. We're developing some data requests. We've already requested and received confidential employer employment and payroll data from the employment department. But again, as the nature of the industry is such that will provide less comprehensive information than some other sources. So we're exploring some other opportunities to characterize some aspects of the industry. And we've started in on our initial engagement. We have not actually contacted many people, but we're trying to prioritize really a long list of agencies, entities, public and private sector groups to figure out how to stage that engagement to make sure we make the most efficient use of the time and project resources. And so that was sort of whirlwind tour of where we are. I will pause there, see if there are any questions or comments about what I said, any clarifications, or you're certainly open to input or suggestions with respect to the study itself.
Thank you so much. Ken?
Yeah, hi, Andrea, I appreciate the information. And I just had a question. If looking at the staffing, the workforce for forestry, are you considering, my company is a staffing company, so just for clarification, and I know the staffing industry will service the Forest Service sector, and I'm just wondering if you're including that, because we do, I mean, my company does not. I've been requested to supply people for that industry. We just haven't done that, but I know that group is a very transient group. We'll travel to different states, and so agencies will establish themselves specifically for this nature, and they do a lot of their own internal training and processing to bring in staff. And I'm just wondering if you're including our industry in that study as well.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, so great point. And yes, definitely mobile workforce. And I think one of the things we definitely need to do is characterize, we can identify and talk about who's on the ground maybe today this year, but how many of those people, employers and businesses are from out of state and sort of more mobile. The short answer is yes. The longer answer is that obviously we have to prioritize. There are a lot of potential stakeholders and interest groups, and I am guessing that questions along those lines will come up as we start talking to industry groups, which will be top priority, and others, and we will let that input guide exactly who we talk to, but definitely an important consideration. That makes sense.
Great, thanks.
Other questions or reflections? Will we be able to get these presentations? I didn't see them in our material. Maybe I missed it. Are they in our material?
No, they're not. We'll make sure everybody gets them, Sherry.
Okay.
Thank you.
Yeah, no worries. All right, Andrew. Well, thank you so much for your time and for dealing with Teams with us. We appreciate it. We really appreciate it. Yeah, and all the work that you are doing, and look forward to the rest of it. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Thank you, Andrew.
All right. So we have Charlie, who is up next on our agenda. Actually, Charlie is our final agenda item.
Sherry, we were the final agenda item the other day as well.
I know, and we were fast.
I know. And is this a trend we're going to be continuing to take on? So.
No. I promise, Charlie, we'll break the trend. And one of these first days, you're going to be first.
Well, I'll make this quick. This is really just an update for everybody in regard to the work that we've been doing in regard to essential employability skills and so forth. So just to let everybody know, we are now in the non-funded season in regard to the work that's been done on both OES, which is the Willamette Education Service District model that Sherry Clark has been working on. She's no longer effectively with WESD. And the ODE funding has run out. It appears as though we're trying to work some back channels, and there is a possibility that we may be able to find some funds to keep Sherry on to continue to assist us perhaps through the end of the year, which would be great because there's a lot of interest and there was a lot of energy that was starting to move forward. I'd really like to thank Sherry and Jenny Newby and especially Todd Nell, because Todd managed to get us onto the HECS commission meeting, which is the one I just referred to, is that we were scripted, highly scripted for that process. And
there were two Sherrys.
That's right. That's right. There was a Sherry Clark and then there, but this is Sherry Dunn, by the way, and Jenny Newby and myself. And so what we really did is try to bring the commission and the commissioners up to speed in regard to essential employability skills, doing it very, very quickly to let them kind of know where we are. But also Sherry Dunn made a very good appeal at the very end, asking that the HEC consider putting some form of a project lead in regard to a dedicated project lead that could continue the coordinated efforts that we need to do to keep this process working and moving forward. And again, since the WTDB is not a fiscal group itself, we don't have the ability to be able to actually staff this. So we will continue to look in the various corners. I know it's going to be a tough budget year, and we're going to try to figure out what to do. We had a good solid meeting with the regional Biz Oregon directors, and almost all of them attended the meeting, and it was the primary focus to inform and engage them in what essential employability skills are and where we're sitting specifically with the Oregon employability skills systems and curriculum and infrastructure that's available. great interest in the conversation. And this also brings about the need for Sherry Clark to remain is that we're trying to set up a seminar to be able to actually deepen their knowledge in regard to what essential employability skills are, and as well as then provide them materials that then they can use as they are working within their regions to continue to spread the word primarily to the business audience of the need for the essential employability skills connection and connectivity. So we'll be working through that process and hopefully working through and finding ODE, fingers crossed, that we can keep Sherry Clark engaged with that. We had follow-up after David Gerstenfeld, who's been a great advocate for us. Thank you, David, very much for the support. We had some good conversation with Jim Farrar, and we are hoping to be able to set up a plan to be able to get the OES model actually into the various work centers around the state. So that's moving a bit slower than what we would like to see at this point, particularly given the timelines that we're working with. However, it does align with the fact that we have the online version that's available now. So again, we've got a K through adulthood education in multiple formats, avatar, direct curriculum with slides and so forth, and as well as an online version that's available. So, and I think that was the piece that Jim was looking for possible use within the employment department offices. So we're ready and willing to kind of kick that off the spot. We're continuing our spot engagement, each of us and members, and we'll be talking more, I think, at the next Workforce Readiness Committee meeting on really just trying to amplify and get anybody to be connecting. I'm not sure that if I advise everybody, but we did do a survey using Veneta Public Relations, and the survey touched, I don't have a final count on it, but we had probably close to 200 touch points with that. We really focused on the chambers to be able to use them to leverage out and advise them of this. And then there was some real strong interest on the back side of it. But again, one of the pieces that's missing is that support for the sustaining, and sustaining is a big part of what Sherry Clark can do, is actually help people use the acts and understand the tools that are available for them to actually continue this further. And that applies to education as well. So haven't stopped. Sherry Clark will continue, and in the absence of direct funding, in a quasi-volunteer format until we can kind of figure out where we are. But we're kind of at the end. As an example, the Asphalt Paving Association of Oregon, which has been an active part of this process, building it to date, is having their conference for owners and execs of the association over in Bend in December, early December. Sherry Clark will be attending in person. Thanks, Sherry Dunn, for training me on this one. Sherry Clark will be attending in person, and I'll be attending via remote, and really speaking to the owners and the senior execs of the association. Both thanks because of the work that John has done in regard to that, but also from an association standpoint of spreading the word. So that's the latest update. We are continuing again to look for funding, and if anybody has any great epiphanies, send them our way. Todd.
Yeah, thanks for that update, Charlie. I just wanted to add, it was my impression, and I got an echo. I don't know why that's happening. Do you guys hear an echo? No.
I turned my mic off. I'm not sure if
Yeah,
that helped.
let's see if
that might
Charlie
have been it,
turns his
Charlie.
off.
Yeah, it's gone. So I think I was just going to add, Charlie, to your update where Sherry Dunn, you and Jenny Newby presented to the Higher Education Coordinating Commission. I thought behind the scenes, listening to that great job the three of you did, that it resonated with the commissioners. And I just wanted to add that you were asked to come back at a future date and provide more information to the commission in terms of what you're learning on the national scene, because you shared some of that, and that seemed to be a big interest to some of the commissioners. And then also in terms of outcomes, as far as what's happening with the Oregon Employability Skills Program that Sherry Clark has been spearheading, and then also what outcomes can you speak to in terms of the good work that Jenny Newby has done with the 9 community colleges and the consortium under that Strengthening Community Colleges DOL grant. So great job. Just wanted to add that little bit more of information.
Thanks. The other part is, Kim, I believe that Team Oregon Build is going to be they've been invited to speak at a federal level in regard to that particular program and so forth. And so that's one that we are going along with them, as in a sense they're carrying our program, which is embedded as a part of that piece and so forth. So when I had spoken to Jim Taylor, but keep your eyes peeled since you're right in the area in regard to that, because I think that will be a national piece that I think will garner a lot of attention. And so, and we'll see if we can continue that trend.
Awesome. Thank you so much. Thank you
Thank
for
you.
that. Yeah, for being there when we call, right up Johnny on the spot, getting that presentation done. Are there any other questions? Is there anything anyone on the board has to share that they are working on that they think would be useful for other folks to know? Any wins, any things you're noodling through? Apparently,
okay, I do. Can y'all
yes.
hear me?
Yes.
Sorry, I'm just having technical difficulties, and I don't know if y'all can even see me. I turned the camera
Yes,
on. Anyway, it is what it is.
We can hear and see you.
Okay, good, because I can't see myself. So I wanted some things that are happening in our world, but also noodling on. Charlie, when you were talking about essential employability skills, and as we've been having this conversation at the WTDB, I just wanted to put out there, because I may lean into this more so on the community college side, is we are having starting conversations to create institutional learning outcomes. You know, we have course learning outcomes, program learning outcomes, but the college, specifically PCC, and I'm certain that there are others, don't have clearly defined institutional learning outcomes. And I'm wondering if there's an opportunity to align the framework and the creation of those at community colleges with, you know, bridging some of those elements within the essential employability skills aspects. And I think it'd be great, like critical thinking, communication, but how do we build that, and how do we create alignment so that we're not having disjointed efforts on the, you know, across the state, across the layers. And I've started that conversation because I was like, I don't want our college to reinvent the wheel. And I think there's an opportunity for me to bring this conversation to the OCCA and the OPC, which is the Oregon President's Council, because it's all 17 of us in the same space, so that we can be having joining in on the conversation and seeing how we are aligned for those colleges that may be ahead of us in doing that, but also where we may need to align. I just want to get away from doing separate things and having misalignment in different languages in different spaces when we're, you know, so I just wanted to put that out there, that we're thinking through it and may come back to you, Charlie, to join us maybe at an OPC or OCCA to have some dialogue around that as well.
Yeah, thank you, Charlie.
Yeah, if I can, real quick, Adrian, thank you very much. Again, when we saw each other at the talent conference, we were going to get together. We still haven't gotten to that done, but at the same point, you've got both our attention as well as Jenny. I mean, again, Jenny worked with the 9 community colleges, and we worked hard to try to stay in alignment. And I think you'd find that as we kind of work with both of those through. So the choices really are at the community college level, but I love the fact that you're actually talking about this as being kind of a structural requirement and so forth. And I think that's what we're all really trying to achieve with this, is to figure out how to do that because I
Yeah.
think, again, that adds credibility. And then I speak often about that currency. It's going to add currency to business and industry when they continue to see this and say, so
Right.
so anyway,
Right.
call. I'm available. So
Thank you. And I just need to put that on the radar of my EA because it's cray cray. So, but thank you for being open, and I certainly will circle back because colleges are doing it. However, there's an institutional level that some of us, PCC being one, have not elevated that. We're doing it maybe at the course level or the program level, and so the institutional level is where we're trying to elevate it further. So thank you.
Yeah, thank you both. And I think one thing that came out of our Todd and I's trip to Arizona is making sure, and I know Charlie is, and making sure that these are tied to employer needs, that employers want to see those things that they need so that they have some standard where they can say, oh yeah, these are the things that I said I needed. And look, the community college is making sure they get the things I said I needed in the employees. So I think that's that type of alignment is super important. Thank you. Anyone else? Anyone else have anything they'd like to share? Anything else? All right. Well, look at that. We are like on time and a couple of minutes early, I think. So if we don't have anything else for, as Anne says, for the good of the order, then I think we will go ahead and be adjourned. Does that sound? Have a good holiday next week, everyone, whenever the heck it is. I'm so confused about what's going on. I didn't realize it was the end of next week. I had a travel snafu as a result, so don't go by anything I say about holidays. So have a good holiday.
you bet. Bye,
Thanks,
all.
everybody.
Bye-bye.
Thank you.
Bye-bye,
Bye-bye.
everyone.
Bye-bye.
Bye.